Opulence is sinful, and we all pay for it.
Tonight your father will die. We are ready. Josefina! Because you must suffer as I have suffered. To those you serve, your life means nothing.
Call of Duty Black Ops 2 is hands down one of my favorite games of all time. In my opinion, it was the last complete Call of Duty, the kind of game where every mode felt intentional and well executed. The zombies, multiplayer, and the campaign. Nothing felt like filler. It all held up. But recently, I've been thinking a lot more about the campaign, and specifically about Raul Menendez. There's something about the world this story takes place in that feels oddly familiar. The political tensions, the media manipulation, the public unrest, a lot of it mirrors what we're seeing in today's world, with only a few exceptions. What really makes Menendez stand out, though, isn't just the chaos he creates, it's why he does it. On the surface, yeah, he comes across like a complete psychopath, ruthless, violent, and willing to kill anyone in his way. But if you pay closer attention, he's not just acting on impulse. Every move he makes is calculated. He's always 2 steps ahead, and more importantly, he knows how to sell his message. And that's what makes him, in my opinion, the most compelling villain the franchise has ever had, even more than Makarov. That Makarov. It's not just the destruction he causes, it's the ideology he stands for, and how disturbingly easy it is to see how people could rally behind him. His ideas, while extreme, tap into real frustration and distrust, and that's what makes him feel so relevant now. Before we dive into the complexity behind Menendez and what drives his actions, it's important to step back and look at the global and cultural context that Black Ops 2 presents, because it shares a surprising amount in common with real life. The game is set in the year 2025, during a new kind of Cold War, a trade conflict between the US and China centered around rare earth elements.
Now, the politicians, they want you to think this is about ideology. It's a lot of horse shit. Give me your phone. Go ahead. Rare earth elements. Whole fucking world runs on this shit.
Drone warfare has replaced traditional boots-on-the-ground combat, and the world is more connected, but also more unstable. On top of that, there's a growing wealth divide. The rich are getting richer, and the average person is being left behind. Sound familiar? It's 2025 in real life now, and we're staring down many of the same issues. Trade tensions with China are ongoing, rare earth elements are becoming one of the most valuable and contested resources in the world, and wealth inequality is at record highs. The world Black Ops 2 imagined more than a decade ago isn't just plausible anymore, it's pretty much here. What's even more fascinating is that Black Ops 2 didn't just pull this future out of thin air. The game actually had help from real-world experts, one of them being American political scientist Peter Singer, or P.W. Singer. He played a key role in shaping the game's vision of 2025, drawing from his own research on warfare, technology, and global politics. And honestly, he nailed it. What we end up with is this eerie example of art imitating life, or maybe even predicting it. The line between fiction and reality starts to blur, and that's what makes the story of Black Ops 2 hit so much harder today than it did back then. Our first real encounter with Menendez in the game takes place in Angola, and right away, it sets the stage for everything that follows. It's here we start to see the roots of his hatred for the United States, not as just some vague anti-West sentiment, but something deeply personal. First, the US government kills his father. Then, just a few years later, his sister, the only person he had left, is killed by Frank Woods during a CIA operation. That was the breaking point for him. From that moment on, everything he does is part of a long, calculated plan for revenge. There's one line that really drives it home, when he's talking to David and he says,
"An American torched the warehouse for insurance money, $11,000. That was the value they placed on our life."
That line sticks with you, and it gives us a window into his mindset. Suddenly, he's not just a villain. He's someone reacting to a system that exploited and destroyed everything he cared about. You don't have to agree with what he becomes, but moments like this force you to understand why he became that way. And what makes this connection even stronger is the fact that the game actually lets you play as Menendez. That's a bold move for a Call of Duty campaign, putting the player in the shoes of the antagonist. But it works. It breaks that emotional distance. You're not just hearing about his pain or seeing it from the outside, you're living it. In the mission Time and Fate, when Menendez storms the compound trying to get his sister, you see the raw desperation in every moment. Menendez isn't calculated here. He's panicked, emotional, and unhinged. He's willing to kill anyone who gets in his way because, to him, this is the last thing he has left to protect, and you feel that. It's a rare moment of vulnerability from a character who's otherwise defined by control and manipulation, and it humanizes him in a way that most games would never risk with their main villain. You see the trauma before the ideology, the grief before the rage. That decision to make us embody him, even briefly, shifts how we see everything that follows. His violence becomes tragic, not just terrifying. His revenge becomes personal, not just political. And that's what makes him so hard to write off. Because for a brief moment, the game doesn't just ask us to understand Menendez, it asks us to be him. It also puts a spotlight on the kind of stuff the CIA was doing during the second half of the 20th century. Things that, in a lot of ways, aren't far off from what's been admitted or uncovered in real life. And Menendez, he made it his life's mission to take all of that pain and turn it into vengeance, no matter how long it took. And if there's one moment that truly shows how far he was willing to go, it's this scene right here.
Make a decision now, or in 10 seconds, you're all dead.
Woods, I can't. I have 2 kids. They... Fuck.
Okay, me! Do it! Do it!
Your life will be consumed by absolute loss. Then and only then will you understand what you have done to me.
That scene still shakes me to my core, not just because of the brutality, but because of how personal it is. Menendez doesn't just want to win. He wants to make everyone around him feel what he felt, that same grief, that same helplessness. He looks Woods in the eyes and promises that his life will be consumed by absolute loss. And in that moment, you believe him. You feel the weight of it. Hudson did everything he could to save Mason's son, David, and in the end, he ended up getting killed for it. He died trying to protect the people he cared about, and it still wasn't enough. He died for nothing. It's more than revenge. It's psychological warfare. It's emotional devastation. And it's in scenes like this where you stop seeing Menendez as just a villain with a plan, and start seeing him as someone who has completely surrendered to the pain inside of him, and is now using that pain to burn the world around him. What makes Menendez such a unique villain isn't just his personal vendetta, it's how he turns that pain into a movement. He doesn't just go underground and start blowing things up, he builds something. He weaponizes ideology. That's where Cortes DA comes in. To the world, Cortes DA isn't some terrorist group, it's a revolution. Menendez positions himself as a voice for the voiceless. He taps into real global frustration, people fed up with corrupt governments, rising inequality, endless wars, and being exploited by the same few powerful nations. He understands how to use media, how to stir emotion, and how to speak directly to the masses. And honestly, he's good at it. He's not hiding in the shadows. He's uploading manifesto videos that get millions of views. He becomes a symbol, not just of resistance, but of hope to the people who feel abandoned. And that's the terrifying part, because even though we know what he's doing is dangerous, you can still see why people would follow him. He doesn't just act like a revolutionary, he is one, in the eyes of many. And when a man like that gains the world's attention, backed by real grief and real strategy, it becomes almost impossible to stop him. What really makes Menendez feel relevant today isn't just the setting or the tech, it's his philosophy. The way he frames himself, the way he talks to the public, the way he turns mass frustration into power. It all mirrors the rise of real-world populist leaders. Populism at its core is about presenting yourself as the voice of the common people against a corrupt elite, and that's exactly what Menendez does. He paints the US government and its allies as the villains, not just because of what they did to him personally, but because of how they treat the rest of the world. He amplifies the anger of the marginalized and redirects it towards one target. Sound familiar? You see this kind of rhetoric in modern politics all the time, where leaders build movements by tapping into people's dissatisfaction, often using nationalism, anti-globalist sentiment, or anti-elitism to gain support. They simplify complex issues into clear us versus them narratives. They weaponize emotion. They use social media and dramatic speeches and viral imagery to build loyalty. Menendez does the exact same thing, but in a digital war zone. He's not just fighting with drones and cyber attacks, he's fighting with ideas. And in many ways, that's even more powerful. Because when people start to believe that someone like Menendez is the only one telling them the truth, or the only one who actually understands their suffering, they'll follow him, even into chaos. That's what makes him so terrifying. Not just because he's ruthless, but because he's convincing. One line that's always stuck with me, and honestly one that has made me even stop and think about, is when Menendez says,
Opulence is sinful and we all pay for it.
That line hits hard, because in just a few words, he's calling out something that a lot of people feel but can't always articulate. The growing gap between the ultra-wealthy and everyone else. The idea that the world is suffering not because of scarcity, but because of excess. That people at the top live in unimaginable luxury while the rest are left to deal with the fallout. And the way he frames it isn't just political, it's moral. He's not just saying inequality is unfair, he's saying it's sinful. That it's something we should all be held accountable for, whether we caused it or allowed it to happen. And honestly, it's hard to ignore how relevant that feels right now. When you look around at rising living costs, record-breaking corporate profits, and how people are struggling just to get by, Menendez's words don't sound like the ramblings of a villain. They sound like something you might hear in a protest speech or read on a viral post. That's part of what makes his character so unsettling. He blurs the lines between villainy and justice. You don't have to agree with his methods, and you shouldn't, but the core message, that hits a nerve. And that's the brilliance of Black Ops 2's campaign. It doesn't give you a clean-cut good versus evil narrative. It wants you to question things. You're not just fighting Menendez because he's the bad guy. You're also seeing firsthand the systems that created him, the collateral damage, the shady intelligence ops, the lives lost in the name of national interest. The game constantly puts you in this gray area. Sure, Menendez is a terrorist. He kills people, manipulates billions, and brings the world to the brink of war. But at the same time, the so-called good guys aren't exactly innocent either. The CIA's involvement in his trauma, the US military's global power plays, and the way the world turns a blind eye until it's too late. All of it forces you to ask, who's really responsible? That's why Black Ops 2 stands out. It doesn't just want you to beat the villain, it wants you to understand him, and then sit with that discomfort. It doesn't let you walk away feeling heroic, it makes you reflect. And that's something you rarely see in military shooters, especially nowadays. Instead of glorifying power, it asks you what power costs. Instead of handing you clear answers, it leaves you in the mess, just like the characters. And that's exactly why this story still holds up in 2025. Maybe even more now than when it first released. Back in 2012, a lot of this flew under the radar. Menendez was just the villain. The future was just fiction and most players were focused on the action. But now, over a decade later, people are going back and realizing just how ahead of its time this game really was. We're living in an era of social unrest, information warfare, rising inequality, and deep mistrust in institutions. And suddenly, Menendez doesn't feel like a character from a sci-fi shooter. He feels like a reflection of the world we're in now. That's why clips of him are all over social media. TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube edits, with people quoting his speeches using his lines in political arguments, and even reinterpreting him as some kind of folk hero. Not because they condone everything he did, but because his message resonates. He speaks to frustration, to betrayal, to the feeling that the system doesn't care, and never did. Just look at what happened on June 20th, when that clip of Menendez's speech started circulating again. It blew up overnight. People stitched it into videos about economic inequality, political corruptions, and hell, even protests. And suddenly, a decade-old Call of Duty villain was being used to express very real, very current anger. That says a lot, not just about the game, but about the world we're in right now. It's wild to think that a Call of Duty game predicted that, but it did. And that's what makes Black Ops 2 so special. Not because it was fun to play, but because it actually said something. Something we're only just now starting to understand. So when you look at everything, the setting, the political climate, the character of Menendez, and how eerily accurate some of his words feel today, it's not just a good story anymore. It feels like a warning, a snapshot of a future that's no longer hypothetical. And that's what makes this game so eerie to come back to. It's not just nostalgia, it's recognition. It's realizing that the lines between fiction and reality have blurred, and that Black Ops 2 might have understood the future, even better than we did.
The papá está muerto. Your father's dead. And his people.
phrase Hortus Die or Day of the Heart.
Some language on there, we don't understand it.
That the U.S. will be moving 2 nuclear submarines.
Rise and strike while they are down.